Have you ever felt like, maybe you're just kind of on autopilot when it comes to like what you believe? It's like you've just inherited your worldview and haven't really stopped to think about why you actually think what you think.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're diving deep into today.
Okay.
We're looking at this article called The Inherited Religion and the Independent Investigation of Truth, a Baha'i perspective.
Okay.
So get ready, because we're going to kind of unpack the differences between just like accepting what you've been told and actually, seeking truth for yourself.
Yeah. It's a question that we all face, I think, at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like the article, it really highlights how we often just adopt beliefs just because they were passed down, through family or culture or just even our social circles.
Right.
And so the article calls this inherited religion, and it's not necessarily tied to a specific faith.
Ooh.
It's more about how we form those foundational beliefs. Okay, so it's not like I inherited the Catholic religion. It's more like I inherited this way of thinking about the world.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Like maybe you grew up hearing certain things were true.
Right.
And you just never questioned them.
Or just kind of absorbed it through osmosis.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that this kind of inherited religion, it can lead to what the article calls prejudgment.
Okay.
It's this tendency to just look for information that confirms what we already think.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it means overlooking, evidence that says the opposite.
Ooh, that's like confirmation bias, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's that thing where you only see what you want to see.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, especially online. Like, you get convinced that a certain theory is true.
Right.
And then you just keep clicking on all these articles that support it.
Yeah.
Even if they're like totally bogus, you know what I mean?
You're just confirming what you already believe.
It's like my brain is filtering out anything that challenges my view.
And that's a perfect example of it.
Oh, wow.
It highlights the potential danger of inherited religion.
Right.
Because when we're so attached to these beliefs that we've always had, it makes it really hard to be objective.
Right.
To fairly weigh evidence.
Right. To see clearly.
The article, it even calls this blind obedience a deep-rooted mental disease.
Oh, mental disease. That seems pretty intense.
Right.
It sounds like it's a lot more than just being a little stubborn.
Yeah.
What makes it so bad for us?
Well, think about it. When we just refuse to question our beliefs,
Okay.
even when we see evidence that contradicts it,
Right.
it kind of creates this conflict inside us.
Yeah.
But psychologists call this cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
And over time, that can lead to, anxiety, stress, and even a feeling of being out of touch with reality.
So it's not just like about being wrong. It's
Yeah.
about the effect of like clinging to those wrong beliefs.
Exactly. And it can affect our relationships with people too.
Oh, right.
Because imagine you're having a conversation with someone and they're completely unwilling to even consider what you're saying.
Right.
Even if you've got good evidence.
Right.
It just shuts down communication, it shuts down empathy, it shuts down understanding.
Yeah, for sure. So if that inherited religion and that blind obedience is kind of the problem, then what's the solution?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the article mentions independent investigation of truth, but what does that even look like in real life?
Right.
Oh,
It's about becoming an active participant in what you believe,
okay.
not
Yeah.
just passively accepting what you've been told.
Right.
The Bahá'í Faith, which is what this article is looking at, it emphasizes three things.
Okay. Give it to me. What are?
Okay. The first one is neutrality.
Okay.
It's like approaching the search for truth without having your belief-tinted glasses on.
Right.
It's kind of like being a detective, You gather evidence, you weigh different possibilities, you follow the facts,
Yeah.
but you don't let your preconceived ideas cloud your judgment.
Okay. Neutrality. It sounds simple enough, but I feel like that's probably way harder than it seems.
Right.
How do you actually empty your cup and approach things with an open mind?
You're absolutely right. It's a process. And it takes being very self-aware.
Right.
We have to be willing to admit our own biases
Okay.
and to recognize when we're clinging to beliefs just because they're comfortable.
Right. Or just because that's what you've always believed.
Well,
so.
right. Not because we genuinely think they're true.
Right. Okay. So it's almost like a mental muscle you got to work out.
Yes.
The more you practice that neutrality, the better you get at spotting your own biases.
Precisely.
Okay.
And the second component, critical thinking. That helps us strengthen that mental muscle. It's about asking the tough questions.
Okay.
It's about looking at the quality of the evidence, thinking about different points of view,
Right.
being willing to change our mind if the evidence leads us somewhere else.
So you're not just accepting blindly, you're actually, doing your own research. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Thinking for yourself. Yeah.
And that brings us to the third one, personal responsibility.
Okay.
This one recognizes that we are each responsible for our own spiritual and intellectual growth.
Right.
We can't outsource that to someone else.
It's like taking ownership of your own mind. Right?
Yeah, you're in the driver's seat.
Right.
You get to choose what you believe and why. And that idea of personal responsibility, that is a core part of the Baha'i Faith.
So it's not just about being open-minded and critical, it's about taking responsibility for what you believe in.
Yeah,
Wow, that's kind of empowering when you think about it.
it is.
Okay, so how does the Baha'i Faith actually fit into all of this?
Yeah,
I mean, the article says that it represents a new chapter in human civilization.
it does.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
So what makes the Baha'i approach so revolutionary?
Well, one thing is that it just completely rejects blind obedience to religious authorities. It encourages people to use their own judgment,
Okay.
to seek truth for themselves.
Right.
And it connects with this fascinating concept in the Baha'i Faith called progressive revelation.
Ooh, progressive revelation. Okay, I want to hear more about that. Okay, what is that?
It's this idea that God's guidance, it's not static, it's always unfolding.
Okay.
And each new messenger brings teachings that are suited for humanity's needs as they change.
So it's not just like sticking to these old ideas just because they're tradition.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
The Baha'i Faith, it really emphasizes being open to new insights, to constantly searching for a deeper understanding.
Right, because the world keeps changing and we have to keep learning.
Exactly.
Okay, so that brings us back to this whole new chapter in human civilization
Right.
thing. So the article is suggesting that we're moving away from just blind faith and towards this more individualized, truth-seeking way of thinking.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a huge change.
It is.
But let's be real, I mean, that transition is not going to be easy, is it?
You're right. It's going to take courage. It's going to take perseverance.
Right.
And a willingness to challenge the way things are.
Right.
But the potential rewards are huge, both for us as individuals
Okay.
and for society as a whole.
Okay, I see the bigger picture now.
Good.
We've talked about the downsides of inherited religion.
Right.
We've talked about the need for this independent investigation of truth.
Yeah.
And we've seen how the Baha'i Faith kind of gives us a framework for this shift in thinking.
Exactly.
Okay, but before we actually dive into, all the specifics of what the Baha'i teachings say about this, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back to explore kind of the details of the Baha'i approach and what it could mean for all of us.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yes.
Okay, so we've been talking about this shift from inherited religion to this independent investigation of truth.
Right.
And how the Baha'i Faith is almost like a guide for this new way of thinking. You mentioned before the break some specific Baha'i writings.
Yes.
That really delve into this, the Kitabi Khan and the Seven Valleys.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about these texts?
Well, they're really fascinating works
Okay.
that offer deeper insights into the Baha'i approach to truth
Okay.
and spiritual development.
Okay.
So the Kitabi Khan, it means the Book of Certitude.
Hmm.
It's one of the foundational texts of the Baha'i Faith.
Okay.
And it really digs into this whole idea of progressive revelation.
Right. Progressive revelation, like God's guidance isn't just a one-time thing.
Exactly.
It's constantly unfolding. It's evolving.
Yes.
It's like software updates for humanity.
Yeah, like upgrades to our operating system.
Right. It seems like that's where things get really interesting.
It does.
What makes this book so unique?
Well, one thing is that it uses all these amazing metaphors and analogies
Okay.
to explain these complex spiritual concepts.
Oh, okay.
For instance, it compares God's guidance to the sun. You know how the sun shines on everyone
Right.
equally,
Right.
regardless of their background or their beliefs.
It's like this universal love, right?
Yeah, there's universal love.
Okay.
So it's like saying God's guidance is like that too.
It's for everyone.
It's available to everyone.
No one is excluded.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And the book, it goes on to say that we shouldn't be stuck in rigid interpretations of past revelations.
Right. Okay.
It's like saying, just because your ancestors thought the world was flat doesn't mean you have to believe that today.
Right. We have to be open to new discoveries.
Exactly, to new understandings.
Okay, so it's not about blindly following tradition. It's about using your own mind to figure out what's true.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's kind of daunting, right?
It can be.
Where do you even start with that?
Well, that's where the Seven Valleys comes in.
Okay.
It's this beautiful mystical text. And it uses this metaphor of a journey to describe the soul's path towards God.
Okay.
And each valley represents a different stage of spiritual development.
It's like a spiritual roadmap.
Yeah, kind of like a roadmap.
Okay.
And the book emphasizes that this journey is really personal. There's no one right way to seek truth.
It's different for everyone.
Exactly.
And we all have our own, inner compass.
Yeah, like an inner compass.
Okay.
And we have to follow that.
Right.
But the journey, it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
It takes a lot of courage.
Right.
A lot of perseverance.
And you have to confront your own, shortcomings.
Yes.
Your own limitations.
Yes, exactly.
It's like that saying, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. It sounds like this independent investigation of truth. It's not just about, learning stuff.
Right.
It's about transformation.
And it is.
It's about growing.
And it's interesting because this process of spiritual searching, it's very similar to the scientific method.
Okay.
Scientists, they don't just accept theories without testing them.
Right.
And we shouldn't just accept spiritual teachings blindly either.
Right. We should apply that same kind of rigor.
Exactly.
Okay. But this whole idea of questioning your beliefs, that can lead to, some serious internal conflict.
Right.
Especially if you're questioning things you've always believed.
Exactly. And that's where that idea of cognitive dissonance comes in.
Right.
That mental discomfort.
Right.
When we're holding on to beliefs that conflict with each other.
Right.
Or when our actions don't match our values.
Right, right. So what do you do when you're in that space?
Right.
Of cognitive dissonance? You're questioning everything. You don't know what to believe.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in.
It is.
But that's where those principles of neutrality and critical thinking and personal responsibility, they come back in.
Okay.
They can help us work through those conflicts.
Okay.
In a healthy way. So instead of just pushing those uncomfortable feelings down.
Right.
Or clinging to beliefs that don't work for us anymore.
Okay.
We can actually use those experiences as opportunities to grow.
Right. To learn.
To deepen our understanding.
So it's not just about intellectual understanding. It's about emotional and spiritual maturity.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a process. And it takes patience. And it takes compassion. And it takes a willingness to be wrong sometimes.
Right.
We're all on this journey.
Right.
We're going to make mistakes.
You're going to stumble.
But it's in those moments when we stumble that we often learn the most.
Right. Those are the biggest growth opportunities.
It's exact.
Okay. This whole conversation is making me think about how interconnected everything is. We started talking about one person's journey to seek truth.
Right.
But it seems like that can have a much bigger impact on the world.
It can. That's what the Baha'i teachings say, is that there's no separation between our personal growth and the advancement of civilization.
It's all connected.
It's all one.
Okay.
So as more and more people start to embrace this idea of independent investigation, it creates a ripple effect.
Okay.
That can change our communities, our institutions, even our global consciousness.
It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
One person's little decision to question something can inspire others.
Yes.
And those ripples can spread.
They do.
Okay.
And the Baha'i Faith, it offers this vision of a future where humanity is united by this shared search for truth.
Okay.
Where everyone celebrates different ways of thinking and where cooperation and understanding are the norm.
Right, where people aren't divided by dogma, but connected by their shared humanities. Okay. Now that's a future I can get behind.
Me too.
But getting from where we are now to that point, that's going to be a journey, right?
It's
a long one.
It's going to take time.
And there's going to be pushback.
Absolutely.
Right.
There are going to be people who resist this.
Right.
Who are afraid of change.
Who like the status quo.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the Baha'i teachings, they offer a message of hope.
Okay.
And resilience. They say that this shifting consciousness, it's inevitable. Right. It's going to happen because it's driven by that human desire to learn.
To know, to understand.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the more people who embrace this idea of independent investigation, the faster that transformation can happen.
Like a tipping point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like a critical mass.
Right. Once enough people start doing it, then things really start to change.
Exactly.
This is all really, really fascinating.
I think so.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so for the person listening right now who's like, okay, I want to start doing this. How do I do that?
That's a great question.
Where do they begin?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And something we're going to look at more in the next section.
Okay.
But before we move on,
Okay.
I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
We've talked about all the potential benefits of this approach, right? For ourselves and for society.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's a choice that each of us has to make. Do we want to keep living on autopilot? Just accepting things that might not even be true?
Right.
Or are we ready to take the wheel and start this journey of self-discovery?
Okay.
Guided by our own reason and our own hearts.
That's a powerful question.
It is.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break to let that sink in.
Okay.
But don't go anywhere.
No.
We'll be right back to discuss some practical tips for putting these ideas into practice.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah, welcome back.
We've been on this journey exploring this whole idea of, going from just accepting what we've always believed to like actively seeking truth.
Right, a big shift.
Yeah, and I bet some folks listening are like, okay, this sounds great, but how do I actually do this?
Yeah.
Like in my real life.
Right, where do you even begin?
Yeah, where do you start? It's kind of overwhelming to think about.
It can be, yeah. And it's one thing to understand it in your head, but how do you actually live it?
Right, exactly.
So remember those 3 principles we talked about for independent investigation?
Oh, yeah. Neutrality, critical thinking, and personal responsibility.
Those are your tools for this journey.
Okay.
Think of them like your compass, your map, and your backpack.
I like that. Okay, so neutrality is like my compass that helps me figure out where I'm at.
Yeah, it gives you your bearings.
Right, but like you said before, it's not just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process. So how do I keep my compass pointed in the right direction day to day?
Well, just start by noticing your reactions to things.
Okay.
Like when you hear a new idea and you feel yourself getting defensive or resistant,
Yeah.
ask yourself, why am I reacting this way?
Okay.
Is it because this idea challenges something I've always believed?
Yeah.
Or is there a genuine reason to be skeptical?
Right.
It's about becoming more aware of those knee-jerk reactions we all have.
Okay.
And pausing before we jump to conclusions.
So kind of like hitting the pause button on my autopilot, right?
Exactly.
Instead of just reacting, I take a breath and observe what's going on in my head.
Yes.
And that's where critical thinking comes in, right?
That's your map.
It helps me sort through all the information out there.
Yeah, navigate the terrain.
So I shouldn't just take things at face value.
No.
I need to ask questions, look for different viewpoints.
Do your own research.
Right, and especially online, it's so easy to get stuck in these echo chambers.
Oh, yeah.
Where everyone's just agreeing with each other.
Yeah.
And you don't get exposed to different ideas.
You got to make an effort to get out of those echo chambers.
Right, to expand my mental map, basically.
Exactly.
And then there's personal responsibility. That's like my backpack.
Right, your backpack.
The one I'm carrying all my beliefs around in.
And you get to choose what goes in that backpack, what you keep, and what you let go of.
It's like taking ownership of my own belief system.
Yeah.
Not blaming other people for what I think.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm seeing how these 3 things work together.
They do.
But this whole process of questioning your beliefs, especially the ones that are really tied to your identity, that can be tough.
It can be really challenging, yeah.
What advice do you have for navigating that?
Well, be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to change everything overnight.
Okay, yeah.
It's about approaching this journey with curiosity and compassion for yourself and for others.
So maybe I could start with one belief that feels kind of safe to question.
That's a good strategy, yeah.
Like dipping my toes in the water before I jump in.
Exactly.
And those Baha'i writings we talked about, the Kitab-i Khan and the 7 Valleys,
yes,
those could be helpful, right?
They can be great companions on this journey.
And there's so many other resources out there too, right?
Absolutely.
Books, podcasts, online groups.
It's an amazing time to be seeking knowledge.
It really is. But it's not just about passively taking in information.
No.
It's about really engaging with it.
Thinking critically.
Being open-minded.
Yeah.
It's about turning that information into, like, real knowledge and wisdom.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what this whole deep dive is about, right?
It is.
Encouraging our listeners to be more active in their own learning journey.
Yes.
To be curious, to challenge their assumptions, and to never stop seeking truth.
That's the goal.
Wow. This has been a powerful conversation.
It has.
But, not everyone is going to be happy about this shift towards independent thinking.
That's true. Change can be scary for some people.
Right. Especially if it threatens the way things have always been done.
Yeah. Those in power often resist change.
Right. But this isn't about forcing our beliefs on anyone.
No, not at all.
It's about inviting them to join us on this journey.
To explore new possibilities.
To build a world where everyone is free to seek truth for themselves.
Exactly.
And isn't that what we all ultimately want?
I think so.
A world where everyone feels empowered to think for themselves, share their perspectives, and contribute to the common good.
A world of unity and understanding.
That's a beautiful vision. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this invitation. Embrace the challenge.
Yes.
Question your assumptions, seek out different perspectives, and never stop exploring the amazing world of truth that's out there.
The journey begins within.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.